I never expected my sister's wedding to feel like walking into a wound I thought had already healed. The ballroom glowed under gold chandeliers, violins swelling through the air, guests spinning in slow circles, but all I could feel was the weight of returning to a family that whispered more than they embraced. I slipped into my seat at table 12, trying to disappear into the linen and candlelight. I hadn't planned to see Tyler tonight. I definitely hadn't planned to see him with Vanessa, her hand resting on her pregnant stomach like a trophy she'd already won. When they approached our table, their smiles were too sweet, their "how have you been?" too smooth. I kept mine polite, practiced, the kind you learn when you've survived heartbreak and moved forward, even when no one believed you could. Before we begin, if you believe that a woman who has fought alone deserves a love fierce enough to fight beside her, make sure to subscribe. It's free, and it helps us share more unforgettable stories from Desire Tales. Tonight's story takes us from a broken wedding night to the arms of a man the whole city fears, yet a child trusts instantly. A man who walks through fire, betrayal, and blood to protect the two people who never expected to matter to him. If you're ready for a love that rises from danger, hit subscribe and let's begin. Then the dancing started, couples filling the floor, laughter rising, chairs scraping, and me alone, pretending it didn't sting that I checked my phone twice, pretending to search for a message that wasn't coming. I just needed the night to end quietly. But nights like this never end quietly, because when I finally looked up, Tyler was already walking toward me through the crowd, with a look that told me the past I'd buried decided it wasn't done with me yet. And that was when the night shifted, pulling me toward a stranger I hadn't noticed yet, but who had already noticed me. Tyler stopped beside my table, wearing that familiar half-smile that once meant everything and now meant nothing. Vanessa was nowhere in sight, maybe fixing her lipstick, maybe soaking up attention somewhere else, but his eyes were fixed on me like the past was something we could casually revisit. "May I have this dance?" he asked, as if the years between us were only minutes, as if my life hadn't moved on without him. "No, thank you," I said, using the steady tone I reserved for difficult parents at the hospital. A boundary wrapped in politeness. He leaned closer. "Come on, Jess. One dance. For old times' sake." Old times. The ones he shattered. I kept my smile thin. "Tyler, go dance with your pregnant wife." Something snapped behind his eyes. "My legitimate child," he said softly, too softly, like he wanted the words to bruise. He left before I could respond. I sank back into my chair, heat stinging behind my eyes, trying to swallow the humiliation. That's when I felt it, a presence. A weight. The unmistakable sensation of someone watching me. I looked toward the bar, and there he was, tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair, precise cut, suit molded to him like it had been made for his body alone. But it was his face that caught me. Angular, striking, lit by the chandelier above him. His eyes were a warm, dangerous amber, and they weren't wandering around the room, they were locked on me. Not curious, not amused. Intent. It should have made me uneasy. Instead, my breath caught, and something in my chest pulled me toward him like gravity had quietly changed direction. I looked away then, unable to help myself. Looked back. He was already moving, walking through the ballroom with quiet confidence, parting the crowd without effort, until he stood at my table as if the night had been waiting for this exact moment. "You've been sitting alone," he said, voice smooth with a soft Italian lilt. "That seems like a waste." And before I could stop it, my entire world tilted, just slightly, just enough to let something new in. And the moment he sat down beside me, nothing about the night stayed the same. Up close, he looked even more arresting, strong jaw, faint scar on his chin, the warm scent of cedar settling around him like a quiet claim. He pulled out the chair beside me without asking, moving with the ease of someone used to being obeyed. "I'm fine," I said, though my pulse betrayed me. "I don't think you are." His voice stayed calm, unhurried. I think you're trying very hard to pretend. I stiffened. You don't know anything about me. He watched me a beat too long. I know that man upset you. And I know you've checked your phone 3 times in the last half hour, debating whether to leave. My breath caught. How could you possibly? He lifted one shoulder. I pay attention. He offered his hand. Giovanni Fioraldi. I hesitated, then shook it. Jessica Reed. Jessica, he repeated like he was testing the taste of the name. You came alone. Everyone else didn't. Word travels fast in this family, apparently. Then he leaned closer, lowering his voice just for me. I have a proposition. Every instinct told me to get up. Leave. Instead I said, what kind of proposition? He didn't flinch. Dance with me. Pretend you're my wife for the rest of the night. Let people wonder instead of pity. My heart lurched. You want me to pretend to be married to you? He smiled, warm, confident, just a hint of edge. Why not? It solves both our problems. I looked toward the bar. Tyler was watching us, jealousy flickering across his expression like a shadow. Giovanni stood and extended his hand. The smart answer is no, he murmured. But the right answer might not be. Something inside me, something tired, bruised, aching, rose to the surface. Just once I wanted to choose myself that I placed my hand in his. One dance. His smile deepened. We'll see. He led me into the center of the room, one hand at my back, guiding me as if we'd danced 100 times before. His touch was firm but gentle, almost reverent. My mother made me take lessons, he said quietly. She believed a man should know how to lead. The grief in his eyes when he spoke of her tightened something in my chest. I'm sorry, I murmured. She must have been wonderful. She would have liked you, he said softly that I shouldn't have moved closer. But I did. The song slowed, the world softened, and for the first time that night I felt seen. When the music faded, people were already watching. Giovanni didn't seem to care. Your family will have questions, he said. Let's give them answers. And as he guided me back to the table, I knew my simple yes had already shifted into something far more dangerous. The moment we reached table 12, the air tightened. My cousin Sandra swooped in like she'd smelled gossip before we even sat down. Jessica, she sang, eyes locked on Giovanni. You didn't tell us you were bringing someone. Giovanni slid my chair out with an ease that felt almost old-fashioned. Giovanni Fioraldi, he said politely. Sandra looked him over, slow, greedy, assessing. Chicago local? My work brought me here, he replied smoothly. Originally Naples. Then casually, seamlessly, he draped his arm across the back of my chair, a small gesture, a loud message. We've been seeing each other quietly, he added. Jessica values her privacy. My pulse stumbled at a lie delivered so cleanly it nearly felt true. Sandra blinked. Months? Really? I forced a polite smile. It wasn't something I wanted to make a big deal about. Soon the table filled with relatives asking too many questions. Giovanni answered all of them with that calm charm. Never over-explaining, never hesitating. When someone asked about Lily, he surprised me by answering gently. She's 5. Loves drawing. I stared at him. I told you that? I whispered. During our dance, he murmured. I listen. The words, simple, quiet, hit deeper than they should. As the night stretched, Giovanni leaned slightly toward me. You play this role well. At lying, I said. At surviving rooms like these, he corrected before I could reply. A shadow cut across the table. Tyler, he didn't even acknowledge Giovanni. Jessica, we need to talk. No, I said, standing. We don't. He sat anyway, voice low with accusation. Who is he? Nobody's heard of him. What's he paying you for this little act? The word stung like a slap. I earn everything Lily and I have, I hissed. Don't you ever imply otherwise. Tyler's glare sharpened. You're dragging yourself into something messy. I'm not letting Lily be part of it. Don't pretend you care about her now, I snapped. You only care when it's convenient. Giovanni appeared beside me, quiet, controlled, dangerous in a way Tyler immediately recognized. Is there a problem? He asked calmly. Tyler stood, swallowed. No problem. Good, Giovanni said. Because I'm taking Jessica home now. Not a question. A conclusion that I should have protested. Instead, I wanted to leave with him. You don't need to drive me, I murmured once Tyler disappeared into the crowd. I do, Giovanni said softly. It's raining, and I'd like to see you home safely. And for reasons I couldn't name, I didn't argue. And as we walked out of the ballroom side by side, I felt the lie we'd told shifting, quietly, dangerously, towards something neither of us could take back. Rain sheeted across the hotel driveway as the valet pulled up a sleek black SUV. Not flashy, quietly expensive, built for safety and shadows. Giovanni opened the door for me with a steady hand, and I slipped inside, the scent of leather and cedar wrapping around me like calm after a storm. He climbed in beside me, close enough to feel the warmth of him, not close enough to feel intrusive. The city blurred past through rain-streaked glass as his driver pulled away. How did you know where I live? I asked. He turned toward me, eyes warm in the passing lights. Your cousin mentioned it. I didn't want to make you uncomfortable by asking. I didn't know if that reassured me or unsettled me. We rode in thoughtful silence until I finally said, Thank you for tonight. For helping me breathe. It wasn't charity, Jessica, he said softly. It was mutual. Then he reached into his jacket and handed me a black business card, silver lettering catching the dim light. If you want to continue this arrangement, he said, just until the noise around you quiets down, call me. No pressure. I stared at the card, simple, elegant, heavier than cardboard should feel. The SUV slowed in front of my building. Giovanni stepped out first, circling to open my door before I could reach for the handle. He walked me inside, rain leaving dark streaks in his hair but not disturbing the calm he carried. You don't owe me anything, he said. You don't owe anyone anything. The elevator dinged softly behind me. I didn't want him to leave, but I didn't know what to ask for either. I'll think about it, I murmured. He nodded, stepping back into the rain. Good night, Jessica. I watched the SUV disappear into the storm until it was gone. Upstairs, Lily's toys were exactly where she left them, her tiny shoes waiting by the door. Order. Safety. The life I built from the ground up. And yet, my pulse hadn't settled since the moment Giovanni Fioraldi walked into that ballroom. By morning, the world snapped back into routine. Lily woke with her usual sleepy smile. The pediatric floor buzzed with the familiar chaos of charts, alarms, and worried parents, but halfway through rounds I turned a corner and collided with the very past I'd tried to bury. Tyler. His posture rigid, his expression sharp, and the look in his eyes. A warning I didn't understand yet. And before I could step around him, I already knew he wasn't finished tearing open what I wanted to leave closed. Tyler shouldn't have been anywhere near the pediatric wing. But there he was, standing in the hallway like he owned the place, like he had a right to intercept the life I rebuilt without him. We need to talk, he said. I'm working, I replied, stepping around him. He moved with me, a shadow refusing to be shaken. I told the front desk I was visiting my daughter. Anger snapped up my spine. She isn't a patient here. Don't use Lily to force your way into my day. His jaw clenched. He lowered his voice. Who is he, Jess? That guy from the wedding. I asked around, Nobody's ever heard of him. He's none of your business. It is my business, he shot back. You show up with some stranger, pretending like you've got it all together, and I stopped walking. Pretending? You left me. You forfeited the right to judge anything about my life. He scoffed. So he's paying you? Is that it? A little arrangement to save face in front of your family. The words cut like glass. I have never taken a dime from anyone, I said, voice shaking with fury. Not from you. Not from him. I take care of Lily alone. Tyler stepped closer, breath sharp. I'm not letting her get dragged into something dangerous. You haven't cared about danger for 5 years, I whispered. Why start now? His eyes flicked over my face. You're making mistakes. Big ones. I'm done listening to you, I said, pushing past him. He grabbed my arm too tight. Jessica, this isn't over. I think it is, I said, pulling free. 2 nurses down the hall glanced over. Tyler realized eyes were on him and backed off, muttering something under his breath before walking away. I forced myself to breathe normally. Chart. Diagnose. Comfort. Repeat. But the tension stayed under my skin, pulsing like a warning. When my shift ended, I walked into the evening rain, hoping the night might wash the day away. It didn't. Because when I got home, balancing Lily on my hip and fumbling for my keys, I felt it. A presence. 2 men stood at the end of the hall, dark coats. Cold eyes. 1 with a tattoo snaking up his neck. Jessica Reed, the taller one said. We need to talk. It's about Fioraldi. My heart slammed against my ribs. I don't know who you're talking about. The other lifted his phone. A photo from the wedding, Giovanni's hand at my back. You're his woman, he said. That means you're our problem. My voice trembled. If you don't leave, I'm calling the police. Call them, the taller one said with a thin smile. We'll be gone before they get here. But we'll be back. He stepped closer. Mr. Volkov doesn't like being ignored. Volkov. A name I'd never heard. Yet it chilled me instantly. Then they walked away like they owned the darkness. I slammed my door shut, locked it twice with shaking hands, and grabbed my phone. I dialed the number on Giovanni's card. He answered on the second ring. Jessica. My breath broke. 2 men came to my apartment. They had photos. They mentioned someone named Volkov. They said they'd be back. A beat of silence. Then, lock your door, Giovanni said, voice low and dangerous. I'm coming to you right now. Giovanni, what is happening? Another pause. Stay with Lily. Don't open the door for anyone. I'll explain when I get there. The call ended, and the fear that had been quietly simmering all night finally detonated. Because I just realized Giovanni's world wasn't something I'd brushed against. It was something already reaching for me. Those 15 minutes stretched into an eternity. I paced the hallway, checking the lock, then checking it again. Each click too small to hold off the terror creeping under my skin. Lily colored quietly on the living room rug, unaware of the danger outside our door. When the knock finally came, it wasn't frantic. It was controlled, measured. Jessica. Giovanni's voice. Low. Steady. Commanding. I opened the door an inch, then wider. Rain slicked his dark hair, a storm at his back and something fiercer in his eyes. He stepped inside immediately, scanning every corner of the apartment with a precision that told me this wasn't the first time he'd walked into a potential threat. Where's Lily? He asked. Asleep? I whispered. I didn't know what to do. You did exactly what you should. But the tension in his shoulders didn't ease. I stood there shaking. Tell me what's going on. Who were those men? He exhaled once, slow and controlled. They work for the Bratva, the Russian syndicate. Volkov is one of their captains. My stomach dropped. Mafia? They think I matter to you because of the wedding. They watched us, Giovanni said. And they misread what they saw. Did they? I whispered that he paused just long enough to make my heart stumble. His voice softened. It doesn't matter what's real. They think you're leverage. That's enough. I wrapped my arms around myself. What do we do now? You and Lily come with me, he said. Tonight. To where? To a secure place. With people I trust. I can't uproot my daughter like that. You can, he said gently, because the alternative is staying here while men who follow orders with bullets know your address. Fear crawled up my spine. I don't want her anywhere near this, I whispered. He stepped closer. You already are. But I swear to you, she will be safe with me. I didn't want to trust him, but trust wasn't a want, it was all I had left. Before I could respond, a soft voice came from behind us. Mama! Lily stood sleepy in the hall, rubbing her eyes. Giovanni turned toward her slowly, like she was something precious, something fragile, something he didn't dare touch too quickly. Hello, Lily, he said gently. I'm a friend of your mom's. She clung to my leg. Shy but curious, I knelt beside her. Baby, we're going to go somewhere safe tonight, okay? She nodded, already drifting back toward sleep. When I rose, Giovanni met my gaze with quiet seriousness. I'm taking you both out of here. He grabbed my suitcase before I could argue. You pack only what you need. I'll handle the rest. 10 minutes later, we stepped into the hallway. Lily slept in my arms. Giovanni walked ahead, every movement sharp, alert, protective as the elevator doors closed, sealing us inside metal and silence. My heart pounded with the full weight of what was happening. I wasn't stepping into a temporary lie anymore. I was stepping into Giovanni's world. A world with enemies, shadows, and rules I didn't understand. And there was no way back. Because once a Mafia war touches your door, you don't get to pretend you're just a nurse from Chicago anymore. You become part of the storm. Chicago blurred past in streaks of wet gold and red as the SUV cut through the storm. I held Lily against my chest, her small breath steady despite the chaos that had just invaded our lives. Giovanni sat beside us, silent but charged, every muscle coiled, every glance toward the windows a calculated sweep for danger. He wasn't just being cautious, he was preparing for war. The SUV pulled into a private underground garage beneath a high rise in the Gold Coast. No signage, no numbers, just concrete and silence. Franco was already waiting near the elevator, his expression carved from stone. Upstairs, Giovanni instructed. His hand brushed my lower back, steady, guiding, protective without confining. The elevator required a key card, a fingerprint, and a coded sequence. When the doors opened, an entirely different world unfolded. The penthouse was a cathedral of glass and steel. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Lake Michigan like a restless painting. Everything inside was quiet, immaculate, expensive in a way I'd only seen in magazines at the dentist's office. I froze in the doorway. This is your home? It's one of them, Giovanni said. But this is the safest. He wasn't bragging, just stating a fact. The way someone might say this door locks. Camila arrived 15 minutes later, hair tousled from rushing, eyes wide with terror that she tried to hide behind a brave smile. She shot Giovanni a look that said, I don't know you, but I'm willing to fight you if I have to. He respected that instantly. Thank you for coming, he told her. Anyone close to Jessica is under my protection. Camila blinked once, twice. You've known her 5 minutes, she whispered to me. He talks like he's known you 5 years. I couldn't explain it either. Giovanni led us upstairs to the guest rooms, each larger than my entire apartment. I laid Lily on a king-size bed. tucking her beneath crisp white linens that probably cost more than my monthly groceries. She didn't stir. Only then did the adrenaline start to break. "What happens now?" I asked, stepping into the hallway where Giovanni waited. The city lights behind him painted him in half-shadow, danger and safety woven together. "Now," he said quietly, "you stay here until I neutralize the threat." "And my job? Lily's school? I can't just disappear." "You won't," he answered without hesitation. "I called in favors. You're on paid family emergency leave for 2 weeks. Lily will have a private tutor here every morning. Everything continues, just from a safer place." "You arranged all of that without asking me?" His jaw tightened just a fraction. "I did." Then softer. "Because when a threat becomes real, I don't negotiate with fate." I should have been angry instead. All I felt was the slow unraveling of fear in my chest. He stepped closer, not invading but steadying. "I know this isn't your world," he said. "But you're in it now. And until it's safe, you're under my roof. My security. My word." "And what does your word mean, Giovanni?" He met my eyes with something fierce and unguarded. "It means no one touches you," he said. "Or your daughter. Not while I breathe." A shiver went through me, not of fear, but of knowing something irreversible had begun downstairs. Thunder rolled across the lake, shaking the windows inside this glass fortress. Everything felt too quiet, too intimate, like the beginning of a story I wasn't ready to admit I'd stepped into. And somewhere in that silence, I realized the danger wasn't just outside these walls. It was standing 3 feet away, wearing an expensive suit and looking at me like I had already become part of his life. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the penthouse windows like nothing dangerous had touched our lives. For a moment, I stood there, watching the lake gleam silver, pretending it was just another ordinary Wednesday. But nothing about this new reality was ordinary. Lily was already awake, darting across the polished floors with fearless fascination, exploring rooms big enough to echo her laughter. She treated the penthouse like a playground. I treated it like a safe house. Giovanni treated it like a fortress. Camilla brewed coffee in a kitchen the size of my old apartment. "You slept 3 hours," she said, sliding a mug toward me. "You need to breathe." I tried. It came out shaky. Giovanni appeared moments later. Crisp shirt, sleeves rolled, speaking rapid Italian into a phone. Even without understanding the words, the tone told me everything. Orders, strategy, moving pieces on a board I couldn't see. When he hung up, he softened instantly. "Lily's pediatrician will be here at 10. Routine checkup. Just precaution." "You arranged that too?" "I thought it would ease your mind." And somehow it did. The doctor arrived, experienced, gentle, used to anxious mothers and powerful men. He examined Lily while Giovanni hovered nearby, asking questions that surprised me with their tenderness. "Has her cold completely resolved? How's her appetite? Does she sleep through the night consistently?" He remembered details I'd mentioned once in passing at a wedding. After the appointment, a private tutor named Mrs. Patel showed up with folders of worksheets and a warm smile. Lily clicked with her immediately, peppering her with questions about dinosaurs and letters and why the number 8 looked like a snowman from the doorway. I watched Giovanni kneel beside Lily as she colored, his massive frame folded beside her tiny one. He offered shading tips with the patience of someone who'd been taught well. "My mother insisted on art lessons," he told her. "She said a beautiful mind needs beautiful hobbies." Lily giggled, drawing a horse with legs too long. He fixed it with 3 gentle strokes. Camilla leaned toward me, whispering, "You realize she's already adopted him, right?" My heart twisted because I knew she was right, and that terrified me more than anything Volkov's men had done. That night, after Lily fell asleep clutching her stuffed rabbit, Giovanni and I sat on the terrace. The lake wind tugged at my hair, and the city pulsed below like a living thing. "You've done so much for us," I said. I don't know how to repay this." He looked over at me, amber eyes softened by the dim lights of the skyline. "You don't repay it," he said quietly. "You just let me protect you." That sounds a lot like a relationship. He exhaled a slow breath. And if it were? The question lingered between us, warm and dangerous, that I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know, but because I did. The next morning, Giovanni's voice snapped through the penthouse as he ended a call with Franco, sharp, controlled, lethal. "We found the leak," he said. His gaze tightened. "It was someone in your family." My blood ran cold. A name I knew all too well was about to shatter the fragile safety we'd built over the last 3 days. And the moment Giovanni said it, I realized this nightmare went far deeper than a fake dance at a wedding. Giovanni didn't sit. He didn't pace. He just stood there in the middle of the penthouse living room, the skyline behind him turning him into a silhouette carved out of tension. "Your cousin," he said finally. "David." My stomach dropped so fast I had to grip the back of a chair to steady myself. "David," I whispered. He's useless, not dangerous." "Useless men," Giovanni said, "become dangerous when they're desperate." He explained it with surgical precision how David had fallen into gambling debt, how the Bratva had spotted his weakness, how one wedding photo, my hand in Giovanni's, his at my back, became leverage he couldn't resist selling. He told them it was all pretend, Giovanni said. But Volkov didn't care. He only cared that you could be used against me. Camila stared at us from the sofa, eyes wide with a kind of horrified clarity. "Where's David now?" Giovanni's jaw tightened. "They have him." "Have him?" I repeated, barely breathing. "You mean they're holding him?" Franco, who'd appeared soundlessly behind Giovanni, answered for him. "In a basement on the south side. As insurance." A sick weight settled in my chest. "Insurance for what?" "For not giving them territory," Giovanni said. "For not backing down." I sat heavily on the arm of the couch. That I didn't like David, that I didn't trust him, but he was family, the kind of family mistake you roll your eyes at, not abandoned to violent men in a warehouse. "We can't just leave him there," I said, voice cracking. "He's an idiot, but he doesn't deserve to die for it." Giovanni paused, and for the first time since he walked in, something flickered across his face. Something human, conflicted. He crouched in front of me so we were eye level. "Jessica," he said gently, "I can't negotiate with men who threaten you." "But this isn't about me," I insisted. "Yes," he said, voice dropping. "It is. It always was. David used you to get to me. If I move wrong, he dies. If I move right, you stay safe. That's the math the Bratva expects me to accept." I shook my head, tears burning behind my eyes. "I don't want anyone dying for a lie we created." Silence stretched between us. Then very quietly I asked, "What would your mother want you to do?" The question hit him like a physical blow. Giovanni stood, walked to the window, and stared down at the city he controlled and protected in equal measure. When he turned back, the decision was already made. "Franco," he said, "set up a meeting with Volkov." Franco froze mid-step. "That is exactly what he wants." "I know." Giovanni's voice was pure steel. "And we're going anyway." He met my eyes. "Because Jessica reminded me that being ruthless doesn't have to mean being inhuman." Something in my chest loosened. Fear mixed with something dangerous and tender. The meeting was arranged for Friday night. Neutral territory. A warehouse near the water. Giovanni didn't ask me to come, that I didn't wait for him to ask. "I'm going," I said. His jaw clenched. "It's not safe." Neither is letting men decide my fate without me in the room. He stared at me for a long moment, and something like respect settled behind his frustration. Then stay behind me, he said softly. And whatever happens, do not speak unless you must. I nodded, though we both knew I wouldn't obey that last rule because, fear or not, this had become my fight too. And I could already feel the storm building toward the moment I'd finally stop being leverage and become something far more dangerous. A woman with nothing left to fear. By Friday evening, Chicago's sky had settled into a low bruise of clouds, the kind that looked heavy enough to crush the horizon. The SUV rolled through the industrial district in near silence, the hum of the engine the only thing steadying my nerves. Giovanni sat beside me in the back seat, hands clasped, gaze fixed forward. Not tense, focused. Like a man walking willingly into a lion's den because he knew exactly how lions thought. Last chance to stay in the car, he murmured without looking at me. I shook my head. I'm already in this. A flicker of something, pride? Fear? Moved across his features. Franco stepped out first when the SUV stopped, scanning the shadows before giving a curt nod. Concrete. Rust. Darkness. A perfect stage for bad decisions. Giovanni helped me out, his hand warm on my lower back, grounding me in ways I wasn't prepared to admit. The night smelled of rain and metal. Men watched us from the shadows, Bratva soldiers, their eyes cold behind the dim light. Inside, the warehouse was cavernous, echoing with every footstep. A folding table sat in the center like a makeshift throne room. Two men waited. One younger, the same one who had shown up at my apartment door. The other, older, broader, sharper, stared at us with pale, wolf-like eyes. Dmitry Volkov. He didn't stand. He simply watched us approach with the patience of a butcher deciding which cut of meat to take first. Mr. Fioraldi, he said in accented English. You brought your woman. How American. She wanted to be here, Giovanni replied, pulling out the chair beside his. His tone was diplomatic steel. This concerns her. Volkov's gaze slid to me. Pretty nurse from the wedding. Braver than she looks. Before I could inhale, he added, pity she got dragged into territory she doesn't understand. Dragged. Used. Leverage. The word sparked something I didn't know was inside me until it burst out. I wasn't dragged anywhere. My voice was steady, even. Surprising. And if you're going to threaten someone, at least have the decency to do it without involving children. The younger Bratva soldier let out a startled laugh. Volkov didn't. He leaned back, hands steepled. You think you can shame me, Miss Reed? No, I said. I think you can choose not to be the kind of man who terrorizes single mothers to win business negotiations. A beat of silence. Volkov studied me like I was a puzzle with an answer he hadn't expected. Giovanni shifted slightly, placing himself between us in an unspoken shield. She speaks for me, he said. But I'll offer terms. Volkov's lips curved into a smirk. Finally, Giovanni laid it out with brutal clarity. You want 3 blocks in the financial district, he said. You can have them. Franco stiffened. I held my breath. Volkov narrowed his eyes. Too easy. What is the catch? The zoning laws change next month, Giovanni said calmly. Property values will drop. Redevelopment freezes for a year. It's yours, but it's a headache. Volkov considered it, then nodded once. And the girl? He asked, chin lifting toward me. No more Bratva intimidation? No more threats, Giovanni said. No more civilians. Volkov drummed his fingers on the table. You ask for peace in a world that doesn't have peace. I ask for boundaries, Giovanni corrected. And respect. Another long silence. Then Volkov rose, slowly, deliberately. He extended his hand. Giovanni stood and shook it with equal force. Deal, Volkov said. You live your life. I live mine. Civilians stay untouched. He paused, looking me over. And as for you, Miss Reed, you surprised me. Rare thing. His eyes softened for half a breath. My wife had the same fire. I kept her close. You should do the same, Fioraldi. The deal was done. David would be released. The Bratva would stand down. The war would simmer instead of boil. But as we turned toward the exit, Volkov's final words followed like a shadow. Be careful, nurse. Courage like yours changes men. And sometimes that is the most dangerous thing of all. Outside, the night air hit me hard. A punch of cold reality. My legs buckled. Giovanni caught me instantly, arms pulling me against him as if he'd been waiting to do that since we walked in. You were incredible, he whispered. I didn't know you had that in you. I didn't either. I breathed into his chest. He tipped my chin up, eyes fierce and soft at once. You terrify me, he murmured. In all the ways that matter. Before I could ask what that meant, his mouth was on mine. Hot. Intentional. A kiss full of everything he'd held back since the wedding. Franco cleared his throat loudly. Can we go before someone decides they didn't like the deal? Giovanni didn't break eye contact with me. Yeah, he said softly. We're going. And as we climbed back into the SUV, I knew the truth that scared me more than any warehouse or mobster ever could. This wasn't pretend anymore, not even a little. By the time the SUV pulled away from the warehouse, the adrenaline that had kept me upright drained so fast it felt like gravity doubled. My hands trembled. My breath came uneven. I didn't realize I was shaking until Giovanni pulled me closer across the seat. Jessica, he murmured, thumb brushing my cheek. Breathe. But I couldn't. Not until the city lights blurred into something soft and distant. Not until I felt the solid weight of his hand anchoring me to the present instead of the nightmare we'd walked out of. Franco glanced at us through the rearview mirror. That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen, he said, or the stupidest. He paused. Probably both. I let out a laugh that came out closer to a sob. Definitely both. Giovanni watched me closely, so closely it made heat curl under my skin despite the cold outside. You faced Volkov like he was a parent I'd forgotten to impress, I whispered. I don't even know where that came from. You were fighting for your daughter, Giovanni said quietly. That kind of courage doesn't come from training. It comes from heart. His words hit something deep in me, something that trembled for reasons entirely separate from fierce silence stretched between us, soft and charged, until he reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear with surprising tenderness for a man whose world revolved around danger, and before I could pull myself together, he kissed me, not careful, not tentative, a kiss that tasted like relief, like tension snapping, like everything we'd been pretending not to want since the dance floor. My fingers curled into his shirt, and for 1 heartbeat to 3, I let myself fall. When we finally broke apart, both of us breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. I've wanted to do that since the wedding, he whispered. Since you looked at me like I wasn't the most dangerous man in the room. You are the most dangerous man in the room, I said softly. And still, he murmured, you didn't look away. The SUV slowed beneath the penthouse building. Franco cleared his throat politely, too politely. We're home. Home. The word lingered as Giovanni guided me out of the car, his hand warm around mine. The elevator ride passed in silence, our breaths the only sound in the confined space. Camila was waiting at the door the moment we stepped in. Her eyes flicked over me, reading me the way only she could. You're safe, she asked. Yes, I breathed. No thanks to common sense. She hugged me tightly, whispering into my ear. Whatever happened, we'll unpack it tomorrow. For now, go check on Lily. I slipped upstairs. Lily slept peacefully, her small chest rising and falling in the quiet dark. Her innocence hit me like a punch. I had walked into a warehouse full of criminals for this tiny, perfect human. When I came back downstairs, Giovanni stood alone in the living room, removing his jacket, tension still coiled through his shoulders. "Jessica," he said softly, "we need to talk." Not angry, not distant. Something deeper. That I moved toward him slowly, heart thundering. "What happens now?" I asked. He exhaled. "The threat is neutralized. David will be released. Volkov will honor the treaty. So we're safe. For now." Silence. Then he stepped closer. "And now that the danger has passed, you need to decide if you want to go back to your old life or stay." My breath caught. "Stay," I whispered. "Not because you're hiding," he said. "Not because you need protection." His hand brushed mine, barely a touch but enough to ignite everything. "Stay because something real started tonight. And we both know it." I swallowed hard. "Giovanni, I have a daughter. If this falls apart, then I'll make sure it doesn't fall apart." His voice lowered. "But only if you want this too." The city hummed outside the window, but inside the penthouse everything felt still, like the world had narrowed to one question suspended in the air. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the answer. Because surviving danger with a man is one thing, but choosing him afterward, that was something far more terrifying and far more honest. The strange thing about surviving a confrontation with the Russian mob is that normal life doesn't wait for you to catch your breath. It sweeps right back in, uninvited and relentless. By the next morning, Lily was chattering about her drawings, Camila was reorganizing the kitchen like it was therapy, and Giovanni, immaculately dressed, was already on calls before sunrise. But there was one new rhythm woven into the chaos. Giovanni didn't hover, he watched. Not possessively, not suspiciously, more like a man checking the walls of a house he wanted to keep standing. By the following week, after days of quiet routine inside the penthouse, tutors, coffee, Lily laughing like nothing had happened, Lauren called. "Family dinner," she announced. "My birthday. Saturday. You're coming. Bring him." I blinked. "Bring who?" "Oh please," Lauren scoffed. "The mysterious man from the wedding who saved you from Mom's pity speeches?" "Yes. We all know." And so it was decided. Saturday night arrived with the kind of sharpened nerves that no warehouse showdown had prepared me for. My sister's judgment could be more dangerous than Volkov's men. I wore a forest green dress. One Giovanni insisted on getting just because. Lily twirled in burgundy velvet, hair braided like a tiny princess. When Giovanni saw us descending the stairs to the penthouse foyer, he stilled. "You both look." He paused, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. "Perfect." Lily beamed. "Mr. Giovanni, you said I get breadsticks tonight." He placed a hand over his heart. "And breadsticks you shall have." His restaurant, Fioraldi's River North, glowed warmly from the sidewalk, all glass and amber lights. But inside, the second-floor private dining room waited like something out of a magazine. Candles, wine, white linens, the city glittering beyond the windows. My family arrived in waves. Lauren and Daniel first, elegant, composed, entirely too observant. My parents next. My mother already scanning the room like a general inspecting terrain. Sophia and her new husband last, glowing with honeymoon softness. And then, unexpectedly, Vanessa, 8 months pregnant and looking exhausted, Giovanni greeted. Everyone with old-world charm, pulling out chairs, pouring wine, making even my mother soften around the edges. He seated me at the head of the table. Lily beside me, himself on my right, a placement so subtle and intentional it made my pulse shift. And then I watched it happen. My father warmed first, drawn into a conversation with Giovanni about architecture and the city's changing skyline. My mother followed, commenting on the restaurant, the menu, the thoughtful hospitality. But it was Lily, curling into Giovanni's side halfway through dinner, sleepy and trusting, that won them completely. He adjusted without missing a beat, one arm resting protectively around her as he spoke to my father, absently smoothing her hair in a gesture so unforced it looked like second nature. Lauren leaned toward me with a conspiratorial whisper. He's good with her. Really good. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I know. Vanessa approached during dessert, one hand on her stomach, eyes tired but sincere. I'm glad you're happy, Jess, she said softly. I mean that. I thought I took something from you. But now I see maybe you dodged a bullet. Her gaze shifted toward Giovanni with something like reluctant admiration. Hold on to this one. Before I could respond, Lily clambered into Giovanni's lap, her voice small and certain. Mr. Giovanni says he'll teach me how to draw buildings. My mother's eyes softened at my father nodded approvingly, and for the first time in years, I felt the impossible. I felt like I belonged at my own family's table. Not pitted, not judged. Not the struggling single mother who couldn't keep up, something else entirely, someone loved later, after the meal wound down, after hugs and goodbyes and my mother whispering, "He's impressive." Giovanni and I carried a sleeping Lily out to the sea air. I in the SUV. The quiet wrapped around us like warm silk. She likes your family, he said softly. They like you, I whispered. He reached for my hand in the dim light. And you? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The silence between us said everything. And as the city glided by outside the tinted windows, I realized that for the first time since the wedding the world felt steady, because Giovanni wasn't just someone in my life anymore, he was becoming part of my family, and I wasn't sure there was a way back from that. Days after the family dinner, something subtle but irreversible shifted, like the world had exhaled, and for the first time Giovanni wasn't just a presence in the penthouse, he was part of the rhythm of our days. He no longer hovered in doorways, he joined. Quietly, naturally. Lily's morning routine became their morning routine. She'd run into his office with crayons in hand, and he'd set aside whatever high-stakes call he was on long enough to lift her onto his lap. She drew horses and crooked castles. He drew perfect arches and skylines. Their worlds fitting together as if they'd been waiting to. Camila noticed it first. You're smiling more, she whispered one afternoon while we folded Lily's tiny laundry. I'm sleeping less, I replied, flustered. That's not what I asked. She gave me that look, the one that sees through walls and excuses. He's not just helping you, she said. He's choosing you. I didn't know what to say to that, because she was right. And that truth was its own danger. That week Giovanni began coming home earlier, 6 instead of 10, sometimes 5. He claimed it was coincidence. But I knew better. One evening, he knocked on the doorframe of the guest room where I was organizing Lily's toys. Arms folded, bare forearms, rolled sleeves. A look I'd come to recognize as the one he used when he was still deciding whether to speak. Dinner? He asked simply. Just us, I teased. And Lily, he added, softening. Always. We set the table together, 3 plates, a bottle of Chianti, Lily chattering about dinosaurs and vowels. It should have felt temporary, improvised. It didn't. It felt like routine, like something that had formed naturally and quietly, without any grand declarations. Later, after putting Lily to bed, we walked onto the terrace. The lake wind tugged at my hair. His coat settled over my shoulders a moment later without him even asking. You're freezing, he murmured. You're always warm. He let out a low laugh. That's not true. It feels true, I said. We stood at the railing. The city glowed below. The night hummed with something unspoken. Jessica, he said quietly, I need you to understand something. I turned toward him. The city lights reflected in his eyes. amber softened by something rare. You weren't an obligation, he said. Not to protect, not to shelter. From the beginning, you were a choice. A slow breath escaped me. And Lily? I asked. He looked toward her bedroom door as if he could see her through the walls. She is not negotiable, he said, voice low. If she is part of your life, she becomes part of mine. I don't do halfway. His words were simple, but they hit me with a force nothing else had. That I wasn't falling for a man who wanted me, I was falling for a man who wanted us. I stepped closer without thinking, leaning into the warmth of him as the wind lifted off the lake. Giovanni, what happens now? His fingers brushed my jaw, slow, reverent, lines blurring, distance collapsing. Now, he whispered. Now we stop pretending this is temporary. He kissed me. Not like the night of the warehouse, full of adrenaline and survival. This kiss was quieter, deeper. Certain that a kiss that didn't ask permission, that a kiss that gave it. When we finally pulled apart, he pressed his forehead to mine. I'm in this, he said. All the way. I trembled, not from fear, but from the truth that had been waiting for breath. So am I whispered, and just like that, the line between his world and mine, between protection and desire, between circumstance and choice, blurred completely. And as we stood on that terrace, city lights reflecting in his eyes, I realized that falling for Giovanni Fioraldi wasn't a cliff. It was a slide I had already surrendered to. The night it happened didn't start with danger. It started with calm, the kind that feels borrowed from a world you don't quite trust. Lily had fallen asleep early, worn out from a day of coloring skyscrapers with Giovanni. I tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and lingered just long enough for that familiar ache, love mixed with fear, to settle deep in my chest. Downstairs, the penthouse was quiet. Camila was already in her room. Franco had gone home. Giovanni was on the terrace, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in low Italian that carried hints of agitation. I stepped outside with 2 cups of tea. He ended the call immediately. Bad news? I asked. Just business. But his jaw was locked, telling me more than the words he didn't say. I handed him the tea, the steam rising between us like a thin veil. Come inside, he murmured, brushing his thumb across my wrist. It's too cold out here. It should have been a normal moment. A quiet night. A rare pocket of peace. But peace in Giovanni's world never lasts. It happened fast. A sound, small, sharp, cut through the stillness of the living room as we stepped back inside. Not loud enough to be obvious. Just wrong enough to snap Giovanni's attention like a wire pulled too tight. He froze. Then he moved. In one motion, he grabbed my arm and pulled me behind him. His voice dropped to a whisper that carried steel. Stay behind me. Don't speak. My pulse crashed against my ribs. What is it? Before I could finish, a figure appeared near the hallway that led to the bedrooms. A man, black clothes, gloved hands, face hidden, inside the safest place I'd ever been. I didn't think. I ran. Lily! I choked, sprinting toward the stairs. But I didn't make it far. Another man stepped out from behind the kitchen island, this one larger, blocking the way. I skidded to a stop, breath strangled in my throat. Jessica, Giovanni barked. Get down! I dropped instinctively. A struggle erupted behind me. Sharp, violent, terrifyingly controlled. Furniture crashed. Glass shattered. A grunt of pain, Giovanni's or theirs, I couldn't tell. The large man reached for me. I scrambled backward, heart slamming, but he caught my ankle with a brutal grip. I kicked, wildly, desperately, connecting with his knee. He faltered for half a breath, just long enough for me to wrench free. Lily! I screamed again. Her cry answered from upstairs, high, panicked, alive. I bolted up the staircase, every instinct firing like lightning. Lily stood in her doorway, trembling, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Mama! I scooped her up, pressing her against my chest, turning just as footsteps pounded up behind me. But it wasn't the intruder that it was Giovanni. Blood streaked his cheek, breaths heavy, eyes lit with a fury I'd never seen in any man. That he grabbed us both into his arms, ushering us toward the panic room hidden behind Lily's closet. In, he ordered. Now. My hands shook so badly I fumbled the keypad. Giovanni pushed my fingers aside and typed the code himself. The steel door slid open with a hiss. Go, he urged, voice raw. Come with us, I whispered. I will, he said, but he didn't move. Giovanni. He cupped my face once, fast and fierce like a brand he pressed into memory. Nessuno tocca la mia famiglia. No one touches my family. Then he shoved the door closed. The lock sealed. The silence dropped heavy. Lily sobbed in my arms, her small body shaking against mine. Mama, I'm scared. I'm here, I whispered, though I was shaking just as hard from the other side of the steel. The sounds of fighting crashed through the air, thuds, shouts, the crack of bone against metal. Then silence. A silence worse than all the noise before it. Giovanni! I whispered into the dark. No answered, and I pressed my forehead to the cold door. Breath trembling, heart clawing its way up my throat. Please, I whispered. Come back. I didn't know if he could hear me. I didn't know if he was still standing, still breathing, still mine. All I knew was that the man who promised no one would touch his family had just chosen to fight alone, and I had never been so terrified to find out what that sacrifice would cost him. Minutes in the panic room didn't pass like normal minutes. They stretched, bending out of shape, each one a tight wire wrapped around my throat. Lily clung to me, her small fingers digging into my shirt, her heartbeat fluttering like a trapped bird outside the steel door. Nothing. No voices, no footsteps, no sign that Giovanni was still fighting, or still standing. I tried calling his name once, softly. No answered. My mind spiraled through every possibility, each worse than the one before it. Maybe they'd overpowered him. Maybe they'd taken him. Maybe he was. I forced the thought away that I couldn't break. Lily needed me whole. Is Mr. Giovanni okay? She whispered, eyes wide with tears. Yes, I said immediately, even though I had no proof, because children believe what their mothers believe, so I had to believe it too. Her breathing slowed a little, mine didn't. Then finally, a sound. A single heavy thud just outside the panic room. Not a fight. Not a body hitting the floor. A knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. My breath caught. Jessica. His voice, rough, strained, but his relief hit so hard my knees buckled. Giovanni, I gasped, pressing my palm to the metal. Is it safe? Yes. Open the door. I hesitated, not out of doubt, out of sheer terror that if I opened it, he'd crumble in front of me. My trembling fingers keyed in the code. The door slid open, and there he was, alive, breathing hard, blood smeared across his jaw, knuckles split, shirt torn, eyes blazing like a man who'd fought through hell and refused to lose. Lily launched herself at him first. He caught her against his chest with an arm that shook slightly from adrenaline or exhaustion. I couldn't tell. His other hand reached for me, pulling me in, holding both of us like he was afraid to let go. You're safe, he whispered against my hair. That's all that matters. But I could feel the tremor in him. He wasn't unhurt, he was just refusing to show it. Are they gone? I whispered. 2 escaped, he said. 1 didn't. The cold in his tone told me exactly what that meant. He pulled back enough to look at me, his gaze sweeping over every inch of my face like he needed proof I was real and unharmed. I'm so sorry, he murmured. This should have never touched you. It wasn't your fault, I whispered. They came for us because of me. No, his voice hardened. They came because someone betrayed us again. The words chilled me. Betrayed? I asked. Who? He exhaled slowly, steadying himself. I didn't want to tell you until I knew for certain. But someone inside my own organization, someone close, fed information to the Bratva. My stomach dropped. Someone close to you? He nodded once. Close enough to know where you sleep. Close enough to know Lily's schedule. Close enough to send men into my home. The room tilted. Who? I breathed. Giovanni hesitated, and that alone terrified me. I don't know yet, he admitted, but I'm going to find out. Lily's fingers curled in his shirt. I touched his arm gently. What now? He lifted his gaze to mine. Whatever softness he'd shown Lily vanished, replaced by something carved from fire and bone. Now, he said quietly, I make a choice. I swallowed. What choice? He reached up and cupped my jaw with a reverence that contradicted the blood still drying on his skin. To stop protecting you and start claiming you. My breath hitched. Giovanni, you and Lily aren't pieces in this anymore, he said. You're not leverage. You're not collateral. You're my family. And I will tear apart every man in Chicago before I let anyone touch what's mine. His thumb brushed a tear from my cheek. But claiming you means war, Jessica. Real war. A shiver moved through me, not fear, not entirely. What does that mean for us? I asked. His answer was simple, final. A vow. It means I stop choosing peace, he whispered, and choose you instead. The weight of his words settled deep in my bones. Outside the panic room, the penthouse lay broken, glass cracked, furniture overturned, streaks of violence marking every surface inside. Buried in the wreckage of a night that could have ended every future we dared imagine, we stood at the beginning of something neither of us could turn away from now. Because Giovanni Fioraldi had just chosen me over his empire, and whatever came next would reshape all of our lives in ways we couldn't unchoose. Giovanni didn't waste time. Within hours, the penthouse was crawling with his men, Eros, Matteo, Dominic, each one moving with the controlled urgency of soldiers preparing for a counterstrike. Every window was reinforced, every hallway monitored. But the real war wasn't here. It was where Giovanni was going. This wasn't a random hit, he told Dominic, voice low but lethal. They knew the blind spots. They knew my schedule. They knew Lily's room. Someone fed them everything. Dominic nodded grimly. I traced the comms. The source pings from an industrial block by the river. Same grid Caruso uses. Caruso. The one name that had shadowed every threat. Giovanni's expression sharpened into something cold and final. Gather the team, he said. We're ending this. I watched him from the top of the stairs, Lily asleep in my arms. Something twisted inside me when I saw the transformation. My protector turning into a man ready to burn down a city. When the others left the room, he climbed the stairs toward me. Jessica, he murmured, brushing a hand over Lily's back. I need you to stay here. With Camila. With Dominic's guards. No exceptions. I swallowed hard. Will you be safe? He didn't lie. I'll come back. That's the only promise I'm making. Because you're sure, I whispered. No, his thumb grazed my cheek. Because I refused to do anything else. He left before I could say the words building in my throat, words I feared would shatter him or bind him too tightly to return. The warehouse was a skeleton of metal and darkness on the riverfront, windows blown out like empty sockets. Giovanni's SUV rolled to a stop, his men fanning out with silent efficiency. Inside, the air reeked of rust and gasoline. Shadows flickered against the high beams as if the whole place was breathing. Franco pointed toward a far corner. Heat signatures. 3. Maybe 4. Giovanni cracked his knuckles once slowly. Caruso first. No negotiations. They moved in. The first 2 guards appeared from behind a stack of crates. Eros dropped one with a single strike. Matteo disarmed the other and shoved him into the wall with enough force to rattle the sheet metal that a third man bolted. Giovanni caught him by the collar, slammed him onto the concrete, and pressed a knee into his spine. "Where's Caruso?" he demanded. The man spat blood. "You're too late." Franco's voice cut across the space, urgent. "Giovanni!" They turned out. A trail of gasoline snaked across the warehouse floor, leading toward a column of crates stacked unnaturally high. And at the top, a single detonator. Blinking red. Caruso wasn't here to negotiate, he was here to erase the building, and anyone inside. "Out!" Giovanni ordered. "Move!" They sprinted back toward the entrance. Metal groaned. The smell of gasoline thickened. A hiss echoed through the rafters. Then boom! The explosion ripped through the warehouse like a beast tearing through steel. Fire bloomed in a violent wave, swallowing crates, walls, machinery, everything. The blast threw Giovanni hard against the concrete, heat searing the air. Franco dragged him up. "We have to go now." But Giovanni's gaze snapped toward the back of the warehouse. A silhouette stood there, burning light framing him like a ghost from another life, Caruso. Alive, smirking, walking backward toward a secondary exit, disappearing just as flames swallowed the path between them. Giovanni lunged forward, but the fire surged, forcing him back. The warehouse groaned, collapsing inward. Eros and Matteo pulled him toward the SUV just as another blast shook the night sky. The building caved in behind them, a roaring inferno swallowing every exit, every clue, every second they'd hoped to use. They made it out, barely, but Caruso did too, and that changed everything. When Giovanni returned to the penthouse at dawn, smoke still clinging to his clothes, I broke. Tears I'd held back all night tore loose the moment he walked in. He caught me before I hit the floor. "I'm here," he murmured into my hair. "I came back." I gripped his shirt, breath shaking. "You almost died." "So did he," Giovanni said, voice dark. "But he didn't. And now he knows something he didn't before." "What?" I whispered. Giovanni lifted my chin, his eyes blazing with something that wasn't vengeance or fear, but purpose. "That he's not fighting for territory anymore." He brushed his thumb across my lips. "He's fighting for the woman I love." The world stopped. My heart forgot how to beat. "Giovanni," his forehead touched mine. "I'm done pretending this is survival. It's not. It's devotion. And he just declared war on the wrong kind of man." His voice lowered to a vow carved from fire. "I'm ending this. For you. For Lily. For us." And as the first light of morning hit his face, I knew this wasn't just a battle for control anymore. It was a battle for the future he'd already chosen for us. The morning after the warehouse exploded, Chicago felt unnaturally still, as if the city itself sensed two men were circling the end of a war. Giovanni didn't rest. He didn't sleep. He didn't sit. He moved with the lethal precision of a man whose purpose had sharpened into a single point. Caruso had slipped through fire. Now Giovanni intended to drag him out of whatever shadow he ran to. Inside the penthouse, a war map unfolded across the dining table. Street grids, ports, warehouses, routes marked in red. Eros, Matteo, Dominic, and Franco stood around it while lily-colored horses in the corner, blissfully unaware. "He won't hide long," Dominic said. "Not after what he tried." "He's not hiding," Giovanni replied. "He's regrouping." Franco tapped the table. "We traced his movements after the explosion. He's using the old Trinity cannery as a temporary base." Matteo let out a low whistle. "That place is a fortress." "It won't matter," Giovanni said. "We're going in." The room fell silent and I stepped forward, heart tight. "I'm coming with you." Giovanni looked up, slowly, like he'd been expecting the argument but hoping to avoid it. "No," he said. "Not this time. You brought me into this world," I replied. "I deserve to see how it ends." He moved closer, voice soft but unbreakable. "I won't risk you. Or Lily." I swallowed hard. "And what if you don't come back? What happens to us then?" His jaw clenched, and for one moment the steel in him cracked, revealing the raw fear underneath. "I will come back," he said. "Because I'm not leaving anything unfinished." He touched my cheek, thumb brushing a tear I didn't realize had fallen. "Jessica, I need you to trust me one last time." Trust. The word weighed heavy, that I nodded, though my stomach twisted with dread. "I trust you." He kissed my forehead gently, too gently. The kind of kiss men give before stepping into danger they don't intend to share. By dusk, the team assembled at the edge of the riverfront. The old Trinity cannery loomed like a metal skeleton, broken windows, rusted beams, and shadows thick enough to hide a battalion. Giovanni adjusted his holster, shoulders squared, eyes cold with purpose. "Remember," he told his men, "Caruso dies tonight." "And if Volkov's men show up?" Franco asked. Giovanni didn't blink. "Then we end them too." They moved as one, silent, disciplined, unstoppable. As they breached the cannery, the air inside tasted like old metal and unfinished wars. Footsteps echoed, guns drawn. The tension pulled tighter. A figure stepped from the shadows. Caruso's sweat streaked his temples, but his grin was wide, deranged with the kind of confidence only a desperate man carries. "Fioraldi," he drawled. "Thought you died in that little fire." "You first," Giovanni said. Gunfire erupted. The cannery exploded into chaos. Bullets ricocheting off steel pillars, shadows jerking across the walls, men shouting orders in the dark. Matteo and Dominic took down 2 guards flanking the walkway. Eros disarmed another with brutal efficiency. Franco pinned down incoming fire. Giovanni cut through the room like a blade. Fast, precise, unrelenting. Caruso fired back. His shots wild but dangerous. He darted between rusted machinery, disappearing deeper into the building. "Giovanni!" Franco yelled. "He's heading for the upper level." Giovanni sprinted after him. The metal stairs shook under their boots as they climbed, gunshots echoing off the high beams. Sparks rained from overhead, lighting the narrow catwalk in flashes of fire. Caruso reached the top first, turning with a snarl. "You're fighting for a woman who'll never survive your world," he spat. "She'll become collateral like everyone else in your life." Giovanni didn't hesitate. "She's the reason I'm ending this." They collided, fists, elbows, steel fury. Caruso was unhinged, fighting with the desperation of a man who'd gambled everything and was watching the last of it slip away. Giovanni fought like a man with something to protect. Caruso lunged with a knife. Giovanni caught his wrist. Twisted, metal clattered, and Caruso stumbled back. "Tell me who helped you," Giovanni demanded. "Who fed you intel from inside my house?" Caruso laughed, blood on his teeth. "Ask your loyal men," he hissed. "Not everyone loves the life you're building with the nurse." Giovanni's eyes narrowed. Then a shot rang out. Caruso's body jerked. He staggered, staring down at the blood blooming across his chest. Behind him, Eros lowered his gun. "He was reaching for another weapon," Eros said. "No saving that one." Caruso collapsed on the catwalk, eyes wide in disbelief as the last of his empire bled out beneath him. It was over. The war, the threat, the shadow that had stalked us from the moment I took Giovanni's hand at the wedding. Giovanni exhaled, long, slow, breaking. "For Jessica," he whispered. He climbed down the catwalk, every step heavy with exhaustion and the weight of everything he'd done to protect us. Outside, the night had shifted, rain beginning to fall, hissing against the old cannery roof like relief. The war was finished. Now only one question remained. What would we become without the danger that had tied us together? Because walking away from a battlefield is easy, walking back into a life, into love, is far harder. When Giovanni returned from the cannery, dawn was just beginning to stretch its pale light across Lake Michigan. He walked into the penthouse wounded, not in body but in spirit, carrying the weight of a choice that had reshaped the course of all our lives. Lily spotted him first. She ran to him with sleepy excitement, arms lifted, voice bright. "Mr. Giovanni, you're home!" He dropped to one knee instantly, gathering her into his arms with a tenderness that didn't match the gunpowder still clinging to him. He held her longer than usual, long enough for her to pull back and frown at him with the perceptiveness only children have. "You're sad," she whispered. "Not sad," he murmured, brushing her hair back. "Just finished." She didn't understand the words, but I did. Finished. The war. The blood. The years of living half in shadow, half in duty. He looked at me over her shoulder. That look undid something inside me. Later, when Lily napped and the apartment finally quieted, he asked me to join him on the terrace. The wind off the lake tugged at my hair. His shirt fluttered slightly at the sleeves. The air smelled like rain and endings or beginnings. "I thought victory would feel different," he said quietly. "You didn't want a victory," I replied. "You wanted peace." He nodded slowly. "That's what I'm afraid I don't know how to live with." I stepped closer. "You do. You already are." He looked at me, then really looked like he was memorizing my face in the morning light. "You and Lily," he said, "are the only things I've been sure of in a very long time." Emotion tightened my throat as he reached into his pocket. Not dramatic, not rehearsed, almost hesitant. He held something small between his fingers. A ring. Simple. Timeless. Beautiful in the way only intention can make something beautiful. My breath caught. "Giovanni," I whispered. He didn't drop to one knee. He didn't need to. This wasn't theater. This was truth. "I bought this the morning after the wedding," he confessed softly. "The morning after you danced with me like you belonged nowhere else in the room." Tears blurred my vision. "You didn't even know me then." "I knew enough." He stepped closer. "I knew I wanted to try for something I thought men like me didn't get: normalcy. Laughter. A kitchen full of crayons. A woman who speaks her truth even when she's terrified." He took my hand and I felt the tremble in his. "This isn't a proposal," he said gently. "Not yet. You've been through enough. And Lily needs stability, not sudden changes." I stared at him, heart thundering. "Then what is it?" I whispered. "A promise." He placed the ring in my palm, curling my fingers around it. "When the time is right, when you want it, not when I do, this becomes yours." Soft rain began to fall, misting the terrace in silver. "And until that day," he continued, voice roughening, "I'm here. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing her. I'm choosing the life we started without meaning to." I pressed the ring to my chest. "Giovanni, this is already ours." He exhaled, a breath that sounded like release, like salvation, like a man who finally believed he could be loved without blood trailing behind him. He pulled me into his arms, kissing my forehead with a reverence that made my knees weak. Below us, the city moved on. Above us, rain softened into a quiet hush. Between us, something new took root, something deeper than danger and steadier than fear. And as I closed my fingers around the ring, I knew the last chapter of our story wasn't about survival anymore. It was about choosing a future we finally had the freedom to build. The night it all began didn't look extraordinary from the outside. No fireworks, no danger humming at the edges, no shadows waiting behind locked doors. Just the soft glow of lamps in the penthouse, the distant hum of the city, and Lily's quiet snores drifting from her bedroom like a lullaby we had finally earned. Giovanni and I sat on the living room floor, backs against the couch, sharing a bowl of strawberries. Lily insisted we save for later. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, exposing the bruises along his forearms, fading reminders of the war he'd closed for us. For the first time since he entered my life, he looked unburdened, not untouchable, not the commander of a city's underground, not the man who'd walked through fire and gun smoke, just Giovanni, the man who watched my daughter draw dinosaurs, the man who remembered how I took my coffee, the man who had quietly built a home that felt like ours long before either of us admitted it. "You're quiet tonight," I said softly. He glanced at me, a smile pulling at one corner of his mouth. "Just thinking." "About what?" "About how close I came to losing all of this," he confessed. "And how I never want to come that close again." My chest tightened. He reached over, brushing a loose curl behind my ear in that slow, deliberate way he always did when he wanted to say something the right way. "I don't want to be the man who brings danger to your door," he said. "I want to be the man who brings you peace." I laughed quietly. A mafia boss promising peace. That's new. He chuckled, low, warm. "No empire is worth anything if I can't come home to you." His words hit deeper than any confession he'd made before, because they weren't dramatic. They were simple, and simplicity is the language of truth. He leaned in, not rushed, not hungry, just certain. When his lips touched mine, it felt like exhaling after holding my breath for weeks. His hand slid to my waist, fingers tracing slow patterns that made my pulse jump in ways I couldn't hide. When we finally pulled apart, his forehead rested against mine. "Jessica," he whispered, "I didn't fall in love with you because of what we survived. I fell in love with you because of who you became when everything tried to break you." Tears gathered in my eyes, soft and grateful. "And I love the way you protect Lily," I murmured. "The way you protect us both, even from yourself." He closed his eyes, letting the words settle in the quiet. For a moment, everything was still. Then Lily's voice echoed sleepily from down the hall. "Mama!" We both turned. Giovanni stood and offered his hand. "Come on. Let's check on her." We walked toward her room together, his fingers laced with mine. His steps matched to mine. His presence steady beside me in a way that felt less like fate and more like choice. Inside, Lily was curled in a tiny ball, clutching her rabbit. She opened her eyes just long enough to see us. "You came back," she mumbled, already drifting off again. Giovanni tugged the blanket higher over her shoulder. "Always," he whispered. She smiled in her sleep. I looked at him, something swelling inside me, something neither of us ran from anymore. He slipped his arm around my waist as we watched Lily breathe peacefully, the room wrapped in the soft glow of her nightlight. "This," he murmured, "is the beginning of everything I've ever wanted." My heart answered before my voice could, and as we stood in the doorway, his hand warm on my hip, my shoulder against his chest, our daughter safe and dreaming, I realized the truth. Survival hadn't brought us here. Love had, love built in stolen moments, love forged in danger, love chosen in the quiet afterward, love that felt like a future. And in that soft, ordinary night, the three of us together, our real story finally began. My favorite part was when Jessica stood her ground in that warehouse, refusing to let fear control her, proving she was never the helpless woman her family pitied, but a mother brave enough to face danger head-on. What was your favorite moment of justice in her story? Drop it in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. Don't miss more powerful stories of love, courage, and second chances. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload from Desire Tales.